Now we need to write remainders as decimals. So first we have 12 divided by 5. We can write that out as a short division, and 12 divided by 5 is 2, remainder 2. So we can write 2 in our answer line, but we don't yet have anywhere to write our remainder to. So what we can do is extend our dividend with a point 0. And we can do that because 12.0 is the same as 12. We haven't changed the question, but now we can copy up the decimal point into our answer and write the remainder 2 in front of our tenths digit. So now 20 divided by 5 is exactly 4, so our answer is 2.4. So we know that 12 divided by 5 is 2 remainder 2. All we did here to get our remainder as a decimal is extend the dividend with a point 0, copy the decimal point up into our answer, and write the remainder in front of the 0, so in front of the tenths digit. And our answer of 2.4 also makes sense if you know how to write remainders as fractions. 12 divided by 5 is 2 remainder 2. So as a fraction, we can write the remainder as our numerator, and then the denominator is the number that we're dividing by. So as a fraction, our remainder is 2/5. But we know about equivalent fractions, so we know that 2/5 is the same as 4/10, and that's why when we're writing the remainder as a decimal, we get 4/10 in our answer. Now we have 19 divided by 4. We can write it out as a short division. 19 divided by 4 is 4 remainder 3. We can write the 4 in our answer line, but in order to write the remainder 3, we need to extend our dividend with a point 0. We can do that because 19.0 is the same as 19. But now we need to copy up the decimal point into our answer. And remember, 19 divided by 4 is 4 remainder 3, so we can write the remainder 3 in front of our tenths digit. So now we have 30 divided by 4. That gives us a remainder as well. 30 divided by 4 is 7 remainder 2. So we can write the 7, but in order to write the remainder 2, we can extend our dividend not with a point 0, because we can only ever have one decimal point in a number, but with a 0 going into the hundredths. And we can do that because 19.00 is the same as 19. But now we have somewhere to write our remainder to. So now 20 divided by 4 is exactly 5 with no remainder, so our answer is 4.75. So 19 divided by 4 is 4 remainder 3, and as a fraction we write that 4 3/4 with the remainder as the numerator and the denominator as the divisor. But 4 3/4 is the same as 4.75 because 3/4 is 0.75 as a decimal. Finally, we have 11 divided by 2. We can write out our short division, and 11 divided by 2 is 5 remainder 1. So we can write our 5, extend with a point 0, copy the decimal point up into our answer, and write the remainder 1 in front of our tenths digit. So now we have 10 divided by 2, which is 5 with no remainder, so our answer is 5.5. So 11 divided by 2 is 5 remainder 1, so we wrote the 5 in our answer line and the remainder 1 in front of our tenths digit after we'd written point 0 on the end of our dividend. And that makes sense because as a fraction, 11 divided by 2 is 5 1/2 because the remainder is the numerator and the denominator is the divisor, the number that you're dividing by. But we know that 1/2 as a decimal is 0.5 because 1/2 is equivalent to 5/10. So that's why when writing the remainder as a decimal, we have 5/10 in our answer. So let's look at this first question. We had 12, so I've shown 1 10 and 2 1s, and we were dividing by 5, so we're going to split what we have into 5 groups. Now first, we need to change the 1 10 into 10 1s, so we have 12 1s. We can share out 10 of those 1s with 2 in each group, so that's why we have 2 in the 1s digit of our answer line. But then, what we can do is exchange 1 whole for 10 tenths, and if we do that with both of our 1s, that gives us 20 tenths. So then, when we share out the 20 tenths between the 5 groups, we have 4 tenths in each group, so that's why we have 4 tenths in our answer. Then we had 19 divided by 4, so that's 1 10 and 9 1s, and we're splitting those into 4 groups. First, we can exchange our 10 for 10 1s, so that we have 19 1s. Now we can share out 16 of those 1s with 4 in each group, so that's why we have 4 in the 1s digit of our answer line. But then we have a remainder 3. And instead of thinking remainder 3 1s, we can change those 1s into 10 tenths, and if we do that with all 3 of them, that gives us 30 tenths. So that's why we could put the remainder 3 in front of our tenths digit, because now we're going to divide 30 tenths by 4. We can share out 28 of those tenths, with 7 tenths in each group, so that's why the tenths digit of our answer is a 7. But we have a remainder 2. We put that remainder 2 in front of our hundredths digit, because we can change each of our tenths into 10 hundredths. So when we do that, altogether we have 20 hundredths, and we can share out all of those 20 hundredths with 5 hundredths in each group, so that's why we have 5 in the hundredths digit of our answer. Finally, we had 11 divided by 2. We can change our 10 into 10 1s and share out 10 of those 1s with 5 in each group. Then we have a remainder 1, but we can write that in front of our tenths digit to give us 10 tenths, and we know that 1 whole can be exchanged for 10 tenths. Then, when we share out those tenths between our 2 groups, we get 5 tenths in each group, so that's why we have 5 as the tenths digit of our answer, 5.5. Now, we're going to divide using short division and write our remainder as a decimal. So first, we have 5,481 divided by 5. So we can see that we're going to get a remainder because all multiples of 5 end in a 0 or a 5. So 5 divided by 5 is 1 with no remainder. 4 divided by 5 is 0, remainder 4. 48 divided by 5 is 9, remainder 3, because 9 times 5 is 45. Then we need 3 more to get to 48. And now 31 divided by 5 is 6, remainder 1. But we need to extend our dividend with a 0.0 and copy up the decimal point before we write our remainder 1 in front of our tenths. And we can always extend with a 0.0 because here 5,481.0 is the same as 5,481. Putting a 0.0 on the end of a number doesn't change the number, but now we can write our remainder as a decimal because 10 divided by 5 is exactly 2. So our answer is 1096.2. Now we have 3,181 divided by 4. So because 3 is less than 4, we can take the first 2 digits together. 31 divided by 4 is 7, remainder 3. Because 7 times 4 is 28, then we need 3 more to get to 31. Now 38 divided by 4 is 9 remainder 2, because 9 times 4 is 36, then we need 2 more to get to 38. And 21 divided by 4 is 5 remainder 1, so we extend with a point 0, copy up the decimal point into our answer line, and then we can write the remainder in front of the tenths digit. So now we have 10 divided by 4. That's 2 remainder 2. So we need to extend with a 0 in our hundredths place value as well. Notice this time it's not a point 0, because we can only ever have one decimal point in a number. But we can write a 0 in the hundredths place, because 3181.00 is just the same as 3181. So we haven't changed the question, but now we have a digit to write our remainder 2 in front of. So now 20 divided by 4 is exactly 5. So our answer is 795.25. Finally, we have 9,651 divided by 2. 9 divided by 2 is 4 remainder 1. 16 divided by 2 is exactly 8 with no remainder. 5 divided by 2 is 2 remainder 1. And 11 divided by 2 is 5 remainder 1. So we extend with a point 0, copy up the decimal point, and write our remainder 1 in front of the tenths digit. So that gives us 10 tenths, and when we divide that by 2, we get 5. So our answer is 4,825.5. Now we need to multiply a number with tenths by a whole number. So first we have 0.2 times 3. We can write this out as a column multiplication, and it doesn't matter that our place values aren't lined up, as long as we remember to copy down the decimal point into our answer line so that it's directly underneath the decimal point in the number that we're multiplying. Now 2 times 3 is 6, 0 times 3 is 0, so our answer is 0.6. Now we have 0.4 times 3. Again, we can write it out as a column multiplication, and we need to copy down the decimal point into our answer. Now 4 times 3 is 12, so that's 1, 2, with the first digit above the next place value column along, which here is our ones column. Now 0 times 3 is 0, plus 1 is 1. So our answer is 1.2. And now 0.3 times 5. We copy down the decimal point, and 3 times 5 is 15, so that's 1, 5. Then 0 times 5 is 0, plus 1 is 1, so our answer is 1.5. And we know that multiplication is really repeated addition. So for 0.2 times 3, we can show 2 tenths and then another 2 tenths and then another 2 tenths. So we've added 0.2 3 times and we can see that we get 6 tenths. Now we have 0.4 times 3. 0.4 is 4 tenths. So if we show 4 tenths, then another 4 tenths, and then another 4 tenths, you can see that we have 12 tenths, but that's the same as 1 whole and 2 tenths, so that's 1.2. Now we can show 0.3 5 times. So 0.3, 0.6, 0.9, 1.2, 1.5 is our answer because we have 15 tenths, and that's the same as 1 whole and 5 tenths. Now we have 3.2 times 4, so we can write it out as a column multiplication, and we need to remember to copy the decimal point down into our answer. 2 times 4 is 8, and 3 times 4 is 12, so we get 12.8. Now 1.4 times 5. We copy down the decimal point, and 4 times 5 is 20, so that's 2, 0. 1 times 5 is 5, plus 2 is 7. So we get 7.0. But 7.0 is the same as 7. All the 0.0 tells us is that we don't have any tenths, so we have a whole number as our answer. Now 2.7 times 4, we copy down the decimal point. 7 times 4 is 28, so 2, 8. 2 times 4 is 8, plus 2 is 10. Our answer is 10.8. So let's take another look at this first question. 3.2 is 3 wholes and 2 tenths, and if we're multiplying by 4, we can show 3.2 4 times. Now, if we do some regrouping, we now have some empty fraction bars, but we've got 8 tenths and 12 ones, so that's why our answer is 12.8. Then we had 1.4 times 5. If we show 1 whole and 4 tenths, that's 1.4, and to multiply by 5, we can show 1.4 5 times. Now, when we do some regrouping, we can ignore these empty fraction bars, but you can see that we've made 2 whole complete fraction bars just from adding our tenths. So that's why our answer is 7.0. Multiplying the tenths gave us 2 wholes, and that's why we wrote 2 above our ones column and 0 in our tenths column, and that's why our answer was a whole number. Then we had 2.7, so that's 2 wholes and 7 tenths, and we were multiplying by 4, so we can show 2.7 4 times. If we do some regrouping, we have an empty fraction bar, but these 28 tenths are the same as 2 wholes and 8 tenths, so that's why we write a 2 above our ones column and leave the 8 as the tenths digit of our answer. Now, with the 2 that we've made from multiplying our tenths, you can see that we have 10 whole fraction bars altogether, so that's why our answer is 10.8. Now, we need to multiply a number with hundredths by a whole number. Remember, if we have 2 digits after the decimal point, the second digit is the hundredths digit. So first, we have 0.02 times 3. We can write that out as a column multiplication, and it doesn't matter that we don't have the place values lined up, as long as we remember to copy down the decimal point into our answer, so that it's directly below the decimal point in the number that we're multiplying. Now, 2 times 3 is 6, 0 times 3 is 0, and 0 times 3 is 0. So we get 0.06. Now we have 0.04 times 3. We copy down the decimal point. 4 times 3 is 12, so that's 1, 2, with the first digit written above the next place value column along, which here is our tenths. Now 0 times 3 is 0, plus the 1 that's on top is 1. And finally, 0 times 3 is 0, so our answer is 0.12. Now 0.03 times 5. We can copy down the decimal point, and 3 times 5 is 15, so that's 1, 5. 0 times 5 is 0, plus 1 is 1, and 0 times 5 is 0, so our answer is 0.15. Now we can show what we did if we make fraction bars which have been split into 100 pieces, so showing hundredths. 0.02 times 3 is like adding 2 hundredths 3 times, so we can show 2 hundredths and then another 2 and then another 2, and you can see that we now have 6 hundredths shaded, so that's why our answer is 0.06. Now, for 0.04 times 3, we can show 4 hundredths 3 times. So there's 4 hundredths, there's another 4, and there's another 4. You can see that we have 12 hundredths now shaded, so that's why our answer is 0.12, because remember, 10 hundredths is the same size as 1/10, so that's why we have 1 in the 10th digit of our answer. And now 0.03 times 5 means that we can show 3 hundredths 5 times. So there's 0.03, 0.06, 0.09, 0.12 and 0.15 as the fifth multiple of 0.03. And again, you can see that 15 hundredths is the same as 1/10 and 5 hundredths, because 10 hundredths is the same size as 1/10. So now let's try 4.32 times 3. We can write it out as a column multiplication, and we need to remember to copy the decimal point down into our answer so that it's directly below the decimal point in the number that we're multiplying. 2 times 3 is 6, 3 times 3 is 9, and 4 times 3 is 12. So that's 12.96. Now 2.84 times 4. We copy down the decimal point, and now 4 times 4 is 16, so that's 16, with the first digit written above the next place value column along. 8 times 4 is 32, plus 1 is 33, so that's 3. And now 2 times 4 is 8. 8 plus 3 is 11, so our answer is 11.36. Finally, we have 3.07 times 5. There's our decimal point. 7 times 5 is 35, so 5. 0 times 5 is 0, plus 3 is 3, and 3 times 5 is 15, so we get 15.35. Let's take another look at this first question. We had 4.32, so that's 4 ones, 3 tenths, and 2 hundredths. We were multiplying by 3, so we can show 4.32 3 times. You can see that we now have 6 hundredths, 9 tenths, and 12 ones, which is the same as 1/10 and 2 ones. So that's why we get 12.96 as our answer. Then we had 2.84, so that's 2 ones, 8 tenths, and 4 hundredths. We're multiplying by 4, so we can show this 4 times. Now you can see that we get 16 hundredths. We wrote the 1 above the tenths column because 10 of these hundredths can make 1 extra tenth. Then we did 8 tenths times 4 is 32 tenths, plus the 1 that we made from adding our hundredths is 33 tenths. But 33 tenths is the same as 3 ones and 3 tenths, because 10 tenths make 1 whole. So that's why we wrote the first digit above the ones column. Then we did 2 times 4 and added 3, and that gave us 11. And you can see here we now have 11 ones. We can push 10 of those ones together to make 1 10 and 1 1. Then we had 3.07, so that's 3 ones, no tenths, and 7 hundredths. To multiply by 5, we can show this 2, 3, 4, 5 times. Now we have 35 hundredths, but 35 hundredths is the same as 3 tenths and 5 hundredths, because 10 hundredths can be pushed together to make 1 tenth. So if 10 hundredths is exchanged for 1 tenth, you can see that we now have 3 tenths and 5 hundredths, so that's why we write the 3 above our tenths column. Then 0 times 5 is 0, plus the 3 tenths that we made from multiplying our hundredths means we have 3 tenths in our answer. So finally, we just did 3 times 5 to get 15, and you can see that we have 15 ones, which is the same as 1 10 and 5 ones. Now we need to multiply a decimal by a whole number. So first we have 2.814 times 5. What we need to remember is that we copy down the decimal point into our answer so that it's directly below the decimal point in the number that we're multiplying. So if we're multiplying a number that has 3 digits after the decimal point, we need 3 squares after the decimal point in our answer. Now 4 times 5 is 20, so that's 20, with the first digit above the next place value column along, so here above our hundredths column. Now 1 times 5 is 5, plus 2 is 7. 8 times 5 is 40, so that's 40. And 2 times 5 is 10, plus 4 is 14. So our answer is 14.070. But we don't need to write zeros on the end of decimals, so we can just write 14.07 as our answer. Now we have 21.26 times 7. We find the decimal point and copy it down into our answer so that it's directly below the decimal point in the question. 6 times 7 is 42, so that's 42. 2 times 7 is 14, plus 4 is 18, so 18. 1 times 7 is 7, plus 1 is 8. And 2 times 7 is 14. So our answer is 148.82. Let's just take a look at this first question again. We had 2.814, so that's 2 ones, 8 tenths, 1 hundredth, and 4 thousandths. We were multiplying by 5, so we can show this 2, 3, 4, 5 times. Now, what we did was 4 times 5, and that gave us 20, and you can see that we have 20 thousandths. But remember, 10 thousandths is the same as 1 hundredth, so when we exchange, we get 2 hundredths, and that's why we wrote the 2 above our hundredths column, and you can see that we now don't have any thousandths, so that's why there's a 0 in the thousandths digit. Then we did 1 times 5 and added 2, and you can see that's the 1 times 5, and that's the 2 hundredths that we made from multiplying our thousandths. Then we did 8 tenths times 5 to get 40 tenths, and we have 40 tenths here. But remember, 10 tenths is the same as 1 whole, so we can exchange those 40 tenths for 4 ones, and that's why we wrote 4 above our ones digit and 0 in the tenths of our answer line, because we now don't have any tenths. Then we did 2 times 5 plus 4, and we have 14. There are 14 ones here, and 10 of those ones can be exchanged for 1 10. So that gives us 14.07 because we have 1 10, 4 ones, 0 tenths, and 7 hundredths. Now we need to divide a decimal by a whole number. First, we have 7.2 divided by 3. We can write this out as a short division, but we need to remember to copy the decimal point up into our answer so that it's directly above the decimal point in the number that we're dividing. Now we can just use short division. So 7 divided by 3 is 2 remainder 1, because 2 times 3 is 6, then we need 1 more to get to 7. And now 12 divided by 3 is 4, so our answer is 2.4. Now we have 4.86 divided by 3. Again, we need to copy the decimal point so that it's directly above the decimal point in our dividend. Now we can just use short division. 4 divided by 3 is 1 remainder 1, because 1 times 3 is 3, and we need 1 more to get to 4. 18 divided by 3 is exactly 6 with no remainder, because 6 times 3 is 18, And now 6 divided by 3 is 2, so our answer is 1.62. Finally, we have 5.862 divided by 3. We copy up the decimal point so it's directly above, and now 5 divided by 3 is 1 remainder 2, because 1 times 3 is 3, and we need 2 more to get to 5. 28 divided by 3 is 9 remainder 1, because 9 times 3 is 27, and we need 1 more to get to 28. 16 divided by 3 is 5 remainder 1, because 5 times 3 is 15, and we need 1 more to get to 16. And finally, 12 divided by 3 is 4, so our answer is 1.954. So let's have a look at this first question. We had 7.2, so that's 7 ones and 2 tenths, and we needed to divide by 3. So we can split the counters into 3 groups. We start by sharing out the ones, but we can only share out 6 ones. We have 2 ones in each group, and that's why we have 2 in our answer line. But the remainder one can be split into 10 tenths, because remember, 10 tenths is the same as 1 whole, and that's why we can write the remainder 1 in front of the tenths digit, because you can see that we now have 12 tenths. If we share out those tenths, we can put 4 tenths into each group, and that's why we have 4 as the tenths digit of our answer. Then we had 4.86 divided by 3, so that's 4 ones, 8 tenths, and 6 hundredths. We start by sharing out the ones. We can put 1 1 in each group, but then we have 1 1 left over, so that's 1 remainder 1. We can put that remainder 1 in front of our tenths digit, because remember, 1 whole is the same as 10 tenths, so putting that together with the 8 tenths gives us 18 tenths to share out. And when we share out those 18 tenths, we can put 6 tenths in each group, so that's why we have 6 as the tenths digit of our answer. And we don't have any remaining tenths, so then we can share out these 6 hundredths. And because we have 2 hundredths in each group, we have 2 as the hundredths digit of our answer. Then we had 5.862 divided by 3, so that's 5 ones, 8 tenths, 6 hundredths, and 2 thousandths. We can start by sharing out the ones. We can put 1 1 in each group, but we have 2 ones that we can't share out, and that's why we have 1 remainder 2. We can put the remainder 2 in front of our tenths digit, because remember, 1 whole can be exchanged for 10 tenths, so now we have 28 tenths. We can share out 27 of those tenths, and we have 9 tenths in each group, so that's why we have 9 as the tenths digit of our answer. But there's 1 remaining tenth that we can't share out, because remember, with division we need equal groups. What we can do though is exchange that 1 tenth for 10 extra hundredths, and that's why we can write the 1 remaining tenth in front of the hundredths digit, because you can see that now we've exchanged, we have 16 hundredths. We can share out 15 of those hundredths, and that gives us 5 hundredths in each group, so 5 as the hundredths digit of our answer. We can write the remainder 1 in front of the thousandths digit, because remember, 1 hundredth can be exchanged for 10 thousandths, so now we have 12 thousandths. We can share those out to get 4 thousandths in each group, so 4 as the thousandths digit of our answer. Now we're dividing a decimal with tenths by a whole number, but when we do that we'll get a remainder, so we'll need to extend our dividend into further place values. So first we have 6.2 divided by 5. We can set this out as a short division, and we need to remember to copy up the decimal point into our answer. Now 6 divided by 5 is 1 remainder 1, but then we get 12 divided by 5 in the tenths, and 12 divided by 5 is 2 remainder 2. So what we need to do is extend our dividend with a 0 so that we have a digit to write the 2 in front of. And we can do that because 6.20 is the same as 6.2, so we haven't changed the question. But now we can divide 20 by 5, and that's 4, so our answer is 1.24. Now we have 9.7 divided by 4. We copy up our decimal point. 9 divided by 4 is 2 remainder 1, and 17 divided by 4 is 4 remainder 1. So we need to extend with a 0 so that we have a digit to write our remainder in front of. Now 10 divided by 4 is 2 remainder 2. So we need another 0, so another digit to write our remainder in front of. And we can do this because 9.700 is the same as 9.7, so we haven't changed the question, but now 20 divided by 4 is 5, so our answer is 2.425. Finally, we have 7.1 divided by 2. We copy up our decimal point. 7 divided by 2 is 3 remainder 1. 11 divided by 2 is 5 remainder 1, so we extend with a 0 so that we have a digit to write our remainder in front of. Now 10 divided by 2 is 5, so our answer is 3.55. Now let's have a look at this first question again. We had 6.2, so that's 6 ones and 2 tenths, and we were dividing by 5. So we can split these place value counters into 5 groups. First, we did 6 divided by 5, and that was 1 remainder 1, because we can share out 5 of these ones to give us 1 in each group, but then we have 1 as our remainder. We could write that in front of the tenths digit, because 1 whole is the same as 10 tenths, so that gives us 12 tenths. But when we divide the 12 tenths, we can have 2 in each group, so that's why 2 is the tenths digit of our answer. But then we have a remainder 2. So here we extended 6.2 into the hundredths, and we could do that because 2 tenths is the same as 20 hundredths. So now when we share out those hundredths, we get 4 hundredths in each group, with nothing left to share out, so that's why our answer is 1.24. Then we had 9.7, so 9 ones and 7 tenths, and we were dividing by 4. 9 divided by 4 is 2 remainder 1, because we can share out the ones so that we have 2 in each group, but then we have 1 left over. We could write that in front of our tenths digit because 1 whole is the same as 10 tenths, so then that gives us 17 tenths. We can share out those tenths with 4 tenths in each group, so that's 4 in the tenths digit of our answer, but then we have 1 remaining tenth. So we extended 9.7 to 9.70, and we could do that because 1 tenth is the same as 10 hundredths. Now we can share out 8 of those hundredths, and we have 2 hundredths in each group, so that's why we have 2 in the hundredths digit of our answer. But now, what can we do with these 2 remaining hundredths? Well, what we did was extended with another 0, so into the thousandths, and 2 hundredths is the same as 20 thousandths. So when we share those out, we get 5 thousandths in each group to give us our answer 2.425. Finally, we had 7.1, so 7 ones and 1 tenth, and we were dividing by 2. We can share out 6 of these ones to give us 3 ones in each group, so that's why there's a 3 in the ones digit of our answer. We can write the remainder in front of the tenths because 1 is the same as 10 tenths. That gives us 11 tenths. When we share those out, we have 5 tenths in each group, so that's why there's a 5 in the tenths digit of our answer, but we wrote the remainder in front of a 0 in the hundredths digit to give us 10 hundredths, and that makes sense because 1/10 is the same as 10 hundredths. So now we can share out those 10 hundredths to give us 5 hundredths in each group and nothing left to share out. So our answer is 3.55. We have 0.5 times 36. So we can set this out as a column multiplication, but we should write the 36 on the top line and the 0.5 below, because 0.5 has 0 ones, which means we won't need a second answer line because anything times 0 is 0. Now, we need to remember that if there's one decimal place in the question, there will be one decimal place in the answer, so we can copy down our decimal point, and now 6 times 5 is 30, so 30. 3 times 5 is 15, plus 3 is 18, so we get 18.0, which we can just write as 18, because if you have 0.0 on the end of a number, you have a whole number. Now the other way of thinking about 0.5 times 36 is changing the 0.5, so changing the decimal into a fraction. We know that 0.5 is the same as 1/2, so we could have worked out 1/2 times 36, so just done 36 divided by 2. Now we have 0.6 times 300, so we can write the 300 on top and the 0.6 below. Again, if there's one decimal place in the question, we need one decimal place in the answer, and now 0 times 6 is 0, 0 times 6 is 0, and 3 times 6 is 18. We don't need a second answer line because we have 0 as our next digit, and anything times 0 is 0. So our answer is 180.0, which we can just write as 180. Now, we could have solved this again by changing the decimal into a fraction. 0.6 is 6 tenths. We could have simplified that to 3/5 as well, and we would still have got the same answer. But if we use 6 tenths, we can see that 300 divided by 10 is 30, and then 30 times 6 is 180, so our answer. Or we could multiply the numerator first. 300 times 6 is 1,800, and then 1,800 divided by 10 gets us 180. Now 312 times 0.3. We need the decimal point copied down. 2 times 3 is 6, 1 times 3 is 3, and 3 times 3 is 9. So our answer is 93.6. Again, we could have changed 0.3 to 3/10 and multiplied that by 312. 312 divided by 10 is 31.2, and then 31.2 times 3 gives the same answer as 312 times 0.3. Or we could have multiplied the numerator first. 312 times 3 is 936, and then we could have divided that by 10 to get our answer 93.6. If we think back to this first question, it can be confusing when multiplication gives us an answer that's smaller than one of the numbers in our question. But to see why that works, we know that 0.5 is 5/10, and one way to multiply by 36 is to add 0.5 36 times. But we can see if we add another 0.5, so another 5/10ths, we now have 10/10ths, but that's the same as 1. And again, if we add another 0.5, so a third one, and then a full float of 0.5, we get 2, and we can see how this would carry on until, when we've done this 36 times, we'll have 18 ones altogether. We have 14 times 5.1, so we can set this out as a column multiplication. And for this question, because we have two two-digit numbers, it doesn't matter which way round we write the numbers. So here I've written 5.1 on top, but it doesn't matter, we could have written 14 on top. But we do need to remember that if there's one decimal place in the question, there will be one decimal place in the answer. So that we don't forget, let's copy the decimal point down into our answer straight away. Now we can just multiply in the same way as if we had 51 times 14. 1 times 4 is 4, 5 times 4 is 20. Now we can write a 0 in our second answer line. 1 times 1 is 1, 5 times 1 is 5. So we can add up our answer lines, and that gives us 71.4 as our answer. Now we have 2.8 times 40. Again, we need to remember to copy the decimal point down into our answer. 8 times 0 is 0, and 2 times 0 is 0. We need a 0 as the last digit of our second answer line. Now 8 times 4 is 32, so 3, 2. 2 times 4 is 8, plus 3 is 11. So we can add up our answer lines, and we get 112.0, which we can just write as 112, because a 0 on the end tells us that we have a whole number. Now 312 times 4.3. So here we've written the question out with the number with the most digits on top. We need to remember to copy the decimal point down into our answer. Now 2 times 3 is 6, 1 times 3 is 3, and 3 times 3 is 9. We write a 0 as the last digit of our second answer line. 2 times 4 is 8, 1 times 4 is 4, and 3 times 4 is 12. Now 6 plus 0 is 6, 3 plus 8 is 11, so 1, 1. 1 plus 9 plus 4 is 14, so 1, 4. 1 plus 2 is 3, and nothing plus 1 is 1. So we get 1341.6. Now let's look at this first question again. We had 14 times 5.1. So what we can do to represent this is to show 5.1, so 5 ones and 1/10, 14 times. So if we show this 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 times, we can now regroup 10 ones into 1/10. And we can do that 7 times, so we get 7 tens in our answer. But now we can regroup our 14/10ths into 1 whole and 4/10ths, and that's why we get 71.4 as our answer, because we have 7 tens, 1 1, and 4/10ths. Now for these questions, we need to divide a decimal by a 2-digit number using long division. So first, we have 14.08 divided by 32. Because we have a decimal point in our dividend, so that we don't forget, let's copy the decimal point up into our answer straight away. Now, because we're dividing by 32, we need to work out our 32 times table. 32 is obviously 1 times 32, but if we add another 32, we get 64, So that must be 2 times 32. Adding another 32 gives us 96 for 3 times. If we add another 32, we get 128 for 4 times, and adding another 32, 8 plus 2 is 10, so 1, 0, and I've written the 1 in red only so that it's easier to see. Then 1 plus 2 plus 3 is 6, 1 plus nothing is 1, so 160 must be 5 times 32. And we can be confident that we haven't made any mistakes with the addition, because remember, 5 times any number always ends in a 0 or a 5, and with 160 we have a number that ends in a 0. So now that we've got to 5 times, it's useful to look back to our question, because sometimes we don't need to work out 6, 7, 8, 9 and 10 times. So if we take the first 2 digits together, we have 14, but that's less than 32. So what we need to do here is take the first 3 digits together and divide 140 by 32. So we need a number in the 32 times table that's as close to 140 as possible, but not more than 140. 128 is the closest number that's still less than 140, so we can write 128 under the 140, and because 128 is 4 times, we can write 4 in our answer line. Now here, because we have a decimal point, it's really important that we write this 4 in the correct place. Remember, we always write the digit above the last digit that we divided, and because we divided 140 by 32, the 4 needs to be written above this 0. So now we subtract and bring down. 140 minus 128 is 12, and we can bring down the 8, so we have 128 divided by 32. We can see that that's exactly 4 times 32, so we can write 4 in our answer, and we don't have any more digits to divide. But here we've written 0.44 as our answer, and we always need a digit before the decimal point. So because this square's empty, we need to write a 0 to give us 0.44 as our answer. And notice 14.08, though it has more digits, is actually less than 32. And if the dividend is less than the divisor, we'll always get 0 point something as our answer. So you can divide a smaller number by a larger number, but when you do that, you'll always get an answer of less than 1. So now let's move on to this question. We have 456.3 divided by 13. Again, we can start by copying the decimal point up into our answer, and now we need to work out the 13 times table. 13 is 1 times 13. If we add another 13, we get 26 for 2 times, 39 for 3 times. If we add another 13, 9 plus 3 is 12, so 1, 2, 1 plus 3 plus 1 is 5, so that's 52 for 4 times, and if we add another 13, we get 65 for 5 times. And that makes sense, and we can be confident that we haven't made any mistakes, because 5 times always ends in a 5 or a 0, and that's what we have here with 65. So now that we've worked up to 5 times, let's look back to our question. Taking the first 2 digits, we have 45 divided by 13. So we need to find a number in the 13 times table that's as close to 45 as possible, but not more than 45. 39 is the closest number that's still less than 45. So we can write 39 underneath the 45. And because that's 3 times, we can write 3 in our answer line. Again, it's really important that we write the digits, we write the multiplication above the last digits that we divided. So because we divided 45 by 13, we need to write the 3 above the 5. So now we can subtract 45 minus 39 is 6, and we can bring down the next digit, so bring down this 6. That means we need to divide 66 by 13. Now the closest number to 66 in the 13 times table, which is still less than 66, is 65. So we can write this 65 below the 66, and because 65 is 5 times 13, we can write 5 in our answer. Now, again, we need to subtract and bring down. 66 minus 65 is 1, and we can bring down the 3, so we have 13 divided by 13, which is, of course, 1. So that gives us 35.1 as our answer.